This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
After sitting through 2 hours already, we have to have something to cover Purim a little bit lighter, the covered Yom Ha'abam Aleinu L'Toiva. So we know if you look at the beginning of the Megillah begins by Hibi Me'ach Hashverosh, and it begins with the Ois Vav. The Megillah Esther begins with the letter Vav, and very interestingly, the Megillah also ends with the Ois Vav, right? V'doiver Shalom L'chol Zaroi. What's the pshat, right? Haloi Davarhu. There has to be a reason why the Megillah begins with the Ois Vav and it ends with the Ois Vav. Then we find something very interesting at the end of the Megillah in Perek Yud. The pasuk says like this: Vayosem HaMelech Achashverosh Mas Al Haaretz V'yeh Hayam. So what we have over here is a Kri Ksiv. Even though it's read Achashverosh, nevertheless it's Ksiv. It's spelled Achashrosh. It's spelled missing 2 vavs, right? Aleph, Ches, Shin, Reish, Shin. The first vav is missing, the second vav is missing. What happened to the vavs, right? The case of the missing vavs. So it starts with the vav, it ends with the vav, but for some reason, at the end of the Megillah, Achashverosh's name is spelled missing 2 vavs, right? Ein beis hamedrash b'li chidush. So even though many years ago we said over a part, but we're going to add, if you look, also at the end of the Megillah, it says, Kiyemu v'kibelu, right? Kiyemu v'kibelu. But that's a Kri V'laiksiv. It's written Kibel, V'kiyem, missing the 2 vavs. So it's written without the vavs, but it's read with the vavs. So there's something special about the Ois Vav in Megillas Esther. It begins with a vav, it ends with a vav. Achashverosh loses his vavs, right? Sometimes Purim is spelled Malay with the vav. Reb Chaim Kanievsky points out in the time of the Krah, twice in Megillas Esther Purim is spelled with the vav, other times Purim is spelled without a vav. Okay. Then the Gemara Megillah tells us about, our good friend Achashverosh. So what's pshat in the name Achashverosh? What were his parents thinking? Where'd they get that? Right? Where'd they get that name from? Right? By the Brit, what do they say? Vikar Shema Achashverosh.
Hashverosho.
So the Gemara Megillah says that Yud Aleph Amud Aleph Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kol Shezoichroi Amar Ach L'Roisha. Whoever mentions Achashverosh says Oy Vei, right? Ach. The Maharsha says Ach is a lashon of whoa, like in Yiddish, Ach and Vei. Ach Wo L'Roishai, to his head. Why dafka his head? I care if it's his head, his tooth, his toe. What do I care? You say ach to the guy. I need to know it's his head. Okay. If you open up your Chumash, if you have a Chumash, now we know that the Parsha of the Moyadim is Parshas Emor, right? Parshas Emor talks about all the Yom Tovim. It starts with Pesach, talks about Shavuos, then it goes to Rosh Hashanah, it talks about Yom Kippur, Sukkot, finished. Eila Moyadei Hashem Mikroi Kodesh Asher Tikvah Yisrael Moyadam Vayidaber Moshe Moyadei Hashem El Bnei Yisrael. Finished. That's the end of all the Moyadim, which are Midoraisa. And then after all the Moyadim, what's the first thing it says in Emor after the Moyadim? Right? Vayidaber Hashem El Moshe V'Yikloi Lecha Shemen Zayis Zach. So what's that a remez to? Chanukah, right? After talking about all the Yom Tovim Midoraisa, it alludes to Chanukah. Okay? And the Roikeach, no problem. The Roikeach says that this is a remez to Chanukah. Take a look in your Chumash. Parshas Emor, every Yom Tov we learn from Parshas Emor, we go through all the Yom Tovim, and at the end of all the Yom Tovim it says, what? V'yikchu eilecha shemen zayisach. And then following the union of shemen zayisach, you know what the Torah talks about? Delakachta soiles. You should take flour. Flour for what? For the lechem hapanim. Shulchan. So after Shem and Zayisach, it talks about the Shulchan. Says the Roikeach, if this is the Parsha of the Moyadim, and it talks about all the Yom Tovim, which are Midoraisa, and then it alludes to Chanukah, which is what? The Yiklei Lecha Shem and Zayisach. So then what's the Lakachta Soilas alluding to? That's an allusion to Purim. The Shulchan is an allusion to Purim. Take a look at the Roikeach. We know the Roikeach, Rabbi Lezer Migarmaiza. Rabbi Lezer Migarmaiza had a tradition from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid and from his father about all the precise number of words and all the tefillos. And he is the master of all the Ramazim in the Torah. Right, in 1197, the Roikeach, during the Crusades, his wife and his 2 daughters were murdered in front of his eyes. And Baruch Hashem, he was able to escape with his son. but this is during the times of the Rishonim, and the Rekech says the following. Look what he writes. Look at number 3. V'lakachta soiles v'yafisa remez lemishte Purim. This is a remez to Purim, right? So it's beautiful, right? You open up Parshas Emor, it talks about all the Yomim Tovim which are Midaraisa. Then it alludes to Chanukah, right? It says v'yikoylech Hashem and Zayizach, and then v'lakachta soiles. That's a remez to the Mishteh of Purim. By the way, he adds in something very cute, right? This is from a Rishon. What do we have after that? We have the Makalel. So remez that on Purim, Oror Haman. It's a remez to Oror Haman. So if you have it from a Rishon already, then you're supposed to say Oror Haman on Purim. Okay. Very interesting. Chasam Sofer quotes the Rekeach. And the Chasam Sofer brings down in the name of a Yesh Mefarshim. What's pshat that Purim is alluded to in the flower of the Shulchan? What is it about the Shulchan that is reminiscent of Purim? So we would say very simply, we know that the main mitzvah on Purim is Mishteh v'Simcha, which you eat on a table. So the Shulchan is a remez to Purim. The Lechem Apanim, the Shulchan is a remez to Purim, right? That's what we would say. Simply put, the remez to Purim is the Shulchan. Comes along the Chasam Sofer. Chasam Sofer says, no, it's much deeper than that. The remez to Purim is a lot deeper than just on Purim we eat on a Shulchan. What's the remez to Purim? So Chasam Sofer says like this. Chasam Sofer, so we would say a Suda, right? They said, no, it's much deeper than that. He says like this. Look at number 5, the Gemara Megillah, Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. We know that, Achashverosh is having trouble with his wife, so he calls, all of his advisors, right? It's very interesting. He has trouble with one lady, he has to call 7 miyatzim, That's how complicated it could get, right? 7 miyatzim. The stargazers, the astrologers, Sanhedrin, Anyway, the Gemara Megillah Daf Yud Beis says like this. The Hakarei Velav, right? What does the Megillah say? The Hakarei Velav, Karshna, Shesar, Admasa, Sarshish, Meres, Marsina, Memuchan. So what would we say? These are 7 Persian advisors. Says the Gemara Megillah, no. The names of these 7 advisors, Karshna, Shesar, Admasa, Sarshish, Meres, Marsina, Memuchan, are not 7 advisors. They were 7 Malachei Hasharis. 7 Malachim who advanced various arguments before the Ribbono Shel Olam to kill Vashti. So even though you're reading the simple story, and it seems like these are the advisors of Achashverosh, nevertheless, the Gemara Masechta Megillah tells us that behind the scenes, what's going on over here? What's going on is 7 Malachim are advancing 7 different arguments to the Ribbono Shel Olam to kill Vashti. What are the 7 arguments? Look in the Gemara Megillah Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, in number 5. The Hakarei Velav, Karshna, Shesar, Admasa, Sarshish, Amar Rav Levi, Kol Pasuk Zeh Al Shum Karbanos Nemar. This whole pasuk was stated regarding Karbanos. Karshna. So we would say, Karshna is his name. No. Amru Malachei Hasharis Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ribbono Shel Olam Klum Hikrivu Lefanecha Karim B'nei Shana. Do the Goyim offer to you Karim, rams, B'nei Shana, a year old? In other words, Karshna is the compound of Karim B'nei Shana. What's Shesar? Klum Hikrivu Lefanecha Shtei Siren. Do the Goyim offer in front of you 2 turtle doves? Admasa. What's Admasa? Klum Banu Lefanecha Mizbeach Adama. Admasa is, do the Goyim build for you a mizbech of ground, right, of earth? Tarshish. What's Tarshish? Do the Goyim serve you with big day kahuna about which it's written that one of the stones was Tarshish? And weiter, the Gemara goes on until it concludes, Mimuchan, Klum, Heichinu, Shulchan Lefanecha. You hear what Memuchan tells the Ribbono Shel Olam? Memuchan says to Hashem, you're going to allow the Goyim to destroy Klal Yisrael? Do the Goyim offer Lechem Hapanim on the Shulchan? Right? You hear Mimuchan, Klum, Heichinu, Shulchan Lefanecha. Do the Goyim prepare a Shulchan for you? Now Rabbi Isai, it comes out, there were 7 Malachim offering 7 arguments before the Ribbono Shel Olam, and of all the arguments that the Ribbono Shel Olam hears from the Malachim, which argument is accepted? Memuchan. So it comes out. Which argument persuaded the Ribbono Shel Olam to allow Vashti to be killed? The argument of klum heichinu shulchan lefanecha. So if we were to ask, in the zechus of which avodah in the Beis Hamikdash were Klal Yisrael saved? In the zechus of the Lechem HaPanim, right? According to Chassam Sofer. These were 7 Malachei Hasharis, who offered 7 arguments before the Rebbeinu Shalom. Mizbeach Adama, Shtei Sorim, Karmenei Shana. And finally, the Makeh B'Patish, the last argument that won over the Rebbeinu Shalom was what? Klum heichinu shulchan lefanecha. So says Chassam Sofer, if we wanted to know in the zechus of what were we saved on Purim, it would have to be what? Zechus of the Shulchan. So it's beautiful. The Reikach is beautiful. You want to know where Purim is alluded to in the Parsha of the Mayadim? After V'yikchu Eilach Hashem and Zayisach, what does the Torah say? V'lakachta soiles. Take flour for the Shulchan. The Shulchan is the mitzvah with which the Malach was able to persuade Hashem to kill Vashti. So even though kipshutai, right? If you take the Gemara at face value, the Gemara, the Reikach at face value, it would seem like the allusion to Purim is Shulchan is a table, right? A table. No, it's more than just a table. In the zechus of the avodah of the Shulchan Memuchan, who the Gemara says was a Malach, convinced Hashem to protect Klal Yisrael. So what we'd like to look into a little bit is what is this inyan that the Shulchan, in the merit of the Shulchan, we were saved in the times of Purim. What does this mean? Also, we have other questions that we want to address. And that is, we know that the Gemara in Megillah discusses, Mibnei ma nischayvu saneim shel Yisrael klaya. What avera did we do in the times of Haman that we deserve to be destroyed? So what does the Gemara say? Shenene misudasai shel oisai rasha. We had hana from the Suda. Now, was the Suda kosher? Simply put, it was kosher, right? Einoi nes, right? Kedas. But even, let's say we say it was treif. Yeah? That's why we deserve to be destroyed? A Jew that eats treif, the punishment is misa? No. It's a lav. It's a lav in the Torah. And because we were nene from the Suda, so then we deserve lahashmed, laroy, goliabed? I mean, it doesn't make sense. That's not the value system. If it would have said, we're Mechal Shabbos, okay, I understand. But because we were nene from a Suda, it could have been kosher. And even if it was treif, that's not a reason to deserve destruction. And we know, furthermore, that in the times of Purim, the Gemara tells us, Hadar kebluha b'mei Achashverosh, right? That in times of Purim we accepted the Torah b'ratzayin. So the Rishonim ask, we accepted the Torah b'ratzayin, didn't we say Nasav and Ishma and Har Sinai? Right? So what do the Rishonim answer? What does the Medrash Tanchuma say in Parshas Nayach? Torah Shebechsav, we accepted willingly at Har Sinai. We did not accept Torah Shebal Peh until the times of Purim. What exactly happened at Purim that we were willing to accept Torah Shebal Peh? What happened? What changed? What changed? Okay. Gemara Masechta Taanis tells us that Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak were sitting at a Suda. Okay? Remember this Gemara? Daf Hey Amud Beis. Gemara Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak. The Gemara goes through many halachic discussions that Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak went through. The Gemara says, Rav Nachman, Rav Yitzchak have a yasri b'sudasa. Amar le Rav Nachman, Rav Yitzchak, leima mar milsa. No, you have a good vart. You have something good to say, a nice dvar Torah to say over. Amar le, he said, you want to hear dvar Torah? The dvar Torah is, you can't talk while you're eating. That's the dvar Torah. Right? This conversation is getting off to a good start, right? They can't talk while you're eating, right? He's asking an innocuous thing, tell me a nice vart. Don't talk while you're eating. Have manners, right? He says, Amar le, hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan. You want to hear what Rabbi Yochanan said? Yeah, you want to hear what Rabbi Yochanan says? Ein masichin besuda. Why? Shema yakdim kaneh leveshet. Because you may make the windpipe come before the food pipe. V'yavo lidei sakana, and you will come to danger. Okay. Rabbi say, we are all aware that the Ribbon Shalom and Klal Yisrael are not just two separate entities that are very close. It's not the pshat that we're Klal Yisrael and Hashem is our God. In a sense, Klal Yisrael and the Ribbon Shalom are one entity. We're one entity. How do we know that? The Medrash says in the beginning of Kisisa es roish b'nei Yisrael. The Ribbon Shalom says, don't think that when you do a mitzvah, you're uplifting yourself. You're uplifting me. Because it doesn't say Kisisa b'nei Yisrael. It says Kisisa es roish b'nei Yisrael. God is our head. Now the head literally means is attached to the guf. Klal Yisrael is the guf. The Ribbon Shalom is the roish. Shenemar, the Medrash says, Vayavar Malkam Lefneim Vashem Beroisham, the Medrash says. Their king passed in front of them and God was at their head. So Rebbeinu Shalom is our head, and we are the body. By the way, now we understand, Chassam Sofer points out, that throughout Tanakh, what part of the body is the Beis HaMikdash referred to as? Tzavarech Kemigdal Hashem. Kemigdal David Tzavarech. Banar Letalpios. The Beis HaMikdash is called the neck. Why is the Beis HaMikdash called the neck? Because what does it connect?
Connection.
It connects the Rosh to the Guf. It connects the Rebbeinu Shalom to Klal Yisrael. It's the medium, right? That's the Beis HaMikdash. The function of the Beis HaMikdash is like this. It allows tefillah to go up from... It allows... That's a master copy. It allows the... It allows tefillah to go up from the guf to the rosh, and allows the hashpais to come down from the rosh to the guf. Okay? That's the function of the Beis HaMikdash. Chassam Sofer writes, that's why when Yosef and Binyamin meet each other, so what does it say? Vayipol Yosef al tzavarech. He falls on his neck. Says Rashi, what's he crying over? The Beis HaMikdash. What does the Beis HaMikdash have to do with the neck? The Beis HaMikdash is the neck of Klal Yisrael. The Beis HaMikdash is the neck. It connects the guf to Klal Yisrael. Right? This is a well-known idea. Okay. Well, let's get a little deeper. If the Beis HaMikdash is the neck, and the Rebbeinu Shalom is the head, and we are the guf, now we know every neck has two pipes. Two pipes. What are the two pipes that connect the head to the guf? The kana, the windpipe, the veshet, the food pipe. Right? Yeah. Those are the two. When you shecht an animal, you have to sever roiv simanim. Both. Right? You have to sever. So if the Beis HaMikdash is the neck between Rebbeinu Shalom and Klal Yisrael, right? And in every head and body, there are two connections. What are the two connections between us and the Rebbeinu Shalom? The kana and the veshet. How do we connect Hashem with the kana, with the windpipe? You daven, you learn, tefillah, do chesed, you speak good about your friend, you do chesed with your mouth. There are many, many mitzvahs we do with our kana. That is the first connection between the rosh and the guf. What's the other connection? The veshet. Now, is it possible to serve Hashem with the veshet? It is possible to serve Hashem with the veshet. If you eat, l'shem shamayim. If a person doesn't eat, stam, to get pleasure. You eat to give you kayach, to learn, to do mitzvahs, to do chesed, to sustain yourself. So these are the two connections between us and the Rebbeinu Shalom. Kana and veshet. Which one is more important? Which one's more important? Can you say one is more important than the other? They're both necessary. They're both important. Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak were on the Madrega that everything that they ate, this on the Chassam Sofer, okay? Everything Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak ate was like a carbon. They were eating it purely to give them koyach and chizuk, lavedus Hashem. So Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak were sitting at the meal, and Rav Nachman says to Rav Yitzchak, tell me a dvar Torah. Rav Yitzchak says, I can't. I'm not allowed to. Why? Because right now I'm eating. And if I'm going to interrupt my eating to say a dvar Torah, people are going to be under the impression that you can't serve Hashem al yidei achila. And v'yavoy lidei sakana in avodas Hashem. Shema yakdim kaneh leveshet. People are going to say, only Torah is important, only avodah is important, only chesed is important. And eating is for, it's a necessary evil, like in the Christian world. So no, listen to some Sofer, amazing pshat. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, ein mesichin besuda. While you're eating, avada at a table, you have to speak divrei Torah. But while you're eating, you can't speak divrei Torah. Why? Shema yakdim kaneh leveshet. You may give precedence, priority to what the avodah that you do with your windpipe over the food pipe. The yavoy lidei sakana, and you're going to come to a danger in avodas Hashem. By the way, this is not in the regular Chassam Sofer al Torah. This is from the Jerushim Agados Chassam Sofer. These are chidushim that he said in his younger years. Bekisvei Yad. It was published many years ago. It's not really readily available. But nevertheless, this is how the Chassam Sofer explains the Gemara.
What's the sakana?
People are going to think the only way to serve Hashem is with the kaneh. Okay. And that's a problem. You could serve Hashem al yidei achila also. In other words, what Rabbi Yochanan is saying is, Shema yakdim kana leveshet. People may give priority to serving Hashem through the windpipe over the food pipe. But it's not. They're both important avenues.
But they're not the same. They're not the same level.
Right. So let's just give a disclaimer. Avada, Torah is connected. Kulam, that's the Ikar Avoda in our lives. But to stop, if you're in the middle of eating, and to stop eating, to say a Dvar Torah as if to say like, this is worthless. No, this is also an important Avoda. Shema yakdim kana leveshet. Yeah? That's how the Chassam Sofer explains the Gemara.
To say this is nothing, it's worth to be vatalid.
Shema yakdim kana leveshet. So listen to this, right? We covered Purim. We'll do a little something from the Shlach Kodesh. Listen to this. So we have two pipes. We have two avenues of connecting to Hashem. We have the Kaneh, Hakol Kol Yaakov, Torah, Tefillah, Chesed, and the Veshet. Achilo l'shem shamayim. Rabbi said these are like two vavs. Yeah, these are like two vavs. In fact, the Shlach Kodesh says the Veshet is a vav. The Veshet is a vav. Take a look. However, the Shlach Kodesh quotes that the esophagus, the food pipe, actually when you're not eating, is angebogen. It's shriveled up. It's small. It's a little vav. But if you give too much achila to the Veshet and you lose focus, then let's take the oisiyos of Veshet. Vav, Shin, Tes. Vav, Shin, Tes. If you start focusing too much on that Vav, you know what's going to happen? You're going to cause the Vav to go to the end of the word. Shin, Tes, Vav. Shtus. It's a foolishness. To get carried away with the eating. That's what the Shas says. That's why you have in Bamidbar, when it talks about Klal Yisrael, they're aggressively going after the man. What does the pasuk say? Shatu ha'am lilkait. Where if you're running after the Veshet, the Vav is going to get transplaced. That's why the Shlach Kodesh says, Chacham, Einov, B'roishay. The Chacham has eyes in his head. Kidding me. And the Shaita has eyes on his toes? What does it mean? Chacham, Einov, B'roishay. Says the Shlach. Chacham, Einov, B'roish, Vav. The Chacham makes sure that at the beginning, the Vav stays at the beginning of Veshet. Chacham, Einav, Beroish, Vav. Make sure the Shlach Kodesh. This is all the Shlach Kodesh Shara Oisiyos. He has many, many pages on Kedushas HaAchila. Many pages. Many pages. Chacham, Einav, Beroish, Vav.
So Achashverosh wasn't Chacham.
What?
So
listen. So the first thing is, when you go after the Achila, the Vav goes from the beginning of the word, goes to the end of the word. Now, when you get really into it, the Vav starts getting a little bit longer, gets a little bit taller, a little bit heavier, and now it's not Shatu anymore, now it's Satan. It becomes from Veshet, that starts off as, the esophagus. It turns into Shatu, and then it becomes Satan. Satan. That's where the Satan comes from. When you get carried away with Achila. That's why, what is Esav? Esav is the Veshet. Yaakov is the Kana. Yaakov is Hakol Kol Yaakov. Esav is Haliteini Na. Just pour it down. Let that Veshet expand. Yeah? What does Targum Onkelos say? Vayivez Esav es Habachayra. Vayivez, says Targum Onkelos, Vishat. Says the Shlach Kodesh, Veshet. That is, right? The Shlach Kodesh, also Chassam Sofer points out, Vayivez Esav Zalchar, Vishat, Lashon of Veshet. That's what Esav is about. So Haman is thinking to himself, what am I going to get? How am I going to destroy Klal Yisrael? I'm going to make them do a little Avera, I'm going to make them, what am I going to do already? So Haman thinks to himself, when do I ever find, throughout history, that someone did an Avera that brought Misa La'olam? That you could eat something and bring the Satan down. The Nachash. Haman minat Torah minayin. Hamin ha'etz. What? It's like a crossword puzzle. Haman minat Torah minayin. Could you find me the three letters Hey Mem Nun? No, because I'm not parked on that block.
Is there a car blocking the Rebbitzin right in front of Shul?
What kind of a car? What kind of a car?
It's a silver van, right here, right.
Maybe it's one of the stores.
Next door or
It's right
Right here.
So the Gemara says in Masechta Chulin, Haman min atar minayin. Where's there a remes to Haman? Right? Hamin ha'etz. So, Shka, what is the Gemara talking about? Because you have the three letters, Hey, Mem, Nun, so we're making like a game out of it? No. Haman min atar minayin means Haman's thinking to himself, where in the Torah do we find that you could make someone do an Avera that will make Satan miraked beinenu and bring klai al ilam? The answer is Hamin ha'etz. Because Adam Arishain went after the Veshet, and when you go after the Veshet turns into Satan. Rabbi, so listen to this, it's amazing. Before Adam Arishain sinned from the Eitz Hadas, where was the Satan? He's outside. And then he eats from the Eitz Hadas, the Satan comes. So Haman learned, when you go after the Veshet, when you go after Achila, that brings the Satan, that brings Klaya. So therefore Haman says, yeah, how do I get that Nun? How am I going to get that Nun from the Vav to a Nun? He says, I'm going to make them eat at the Suda. I'm going to be Ma'ayra the Ched of the Eitz Hadas. And that's why Haman says, Yasu Eitz, how high? Chamishim Amma. Why Chamishim Amma? You hang someone 50 amos tall, you can't even see who's up there. I mean, if you want to hang someone, you don't hang them 50 amos tall, right? The Gemara says above 20 amos, you can't even see it anymore. Why 50 amos? The answer is Haman wanted to be Ma'ayra the Nun of the Satan, turning the Veshet, like the Shlah says, making it into Shatu, and then elongating the Vav into Satan. Shlah Kadosh says like this.
He's the one that prepared all the Suda, Haman?
Nah?
Haman did all the Suda.
Haman, he's a smart guy.
He did this.
He heard this. He knew the Shiur. He knew all this. He knew Haman min atar minayin. Where did Haman learn that by being machshel someone avera, you bring klaya? Hamin ha'etz. Yeah, maybe.
It's all Suda Sachar.
Haliteni na min ha'adam hazeh. What does the Baal HaTurim say? Haliteni na min Rashi Tevis Haman. Same thing. Esav knows, just pour it down. Why? Esav says, I'm so involved in my Veshet. The Satan rules over me so much. Haliteni na min spells out Haman. Says the Shlah. Says the Shlah, that's why you have, listen to this, 5 times, Rashi in Parshas B'chukaisai brings down that there are 5 times in Tanakh that Yaakov Avinu's name is spelled Malay. Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Vav, Vez. Why 5 times? He has 5 extra Vavs. 6 extra Vavs. Right? 5 extra Vavs. 5 times Yaakov is spelled Malay. Why? 5 times Vav is, which ice? Lamed. Because Yaakov Avinu is the Kaneh. Lamed, Limud HaTorah. So Yaakov Avinu takes 5 of the Vavs to himself. 5 times Vav is 30. That's why the 5 Vavs of Yaakov Avinu represent the ice Lamed of Limud HaTorah. So we have the struggle between Yaakov Avinu and Esav. Yaakov is the Kaneh. Esav is the Veshet. Now, the Veshet's important for us also. Because if we're able to influence the Veshet, so then like the Gemara in Taina says, no, Shema Yaktim Kana Veshet. They're both equally important avenues of serving Hashem. But if the Veshet starts to influence the Kaneh, so then the Veshet expands, the Vav goes to the end of the word, it becomes Shaita, and then the Satan comes. So you have these 2 Vavs, the Kaneh and the Veshet, that are always struggling with each other. Rabbi say, how many loaves of bread do we have on the Lechem HaPanim? 12. You have Vav on one side, you have Vav on the other side. Rabbi Say says the Bnei Yissaschar, amazing. Yeah. If the Beis HaMikdash was the Tzavar of Klal Yisrael, the neck of Klal Yisrael, Tzavarech Kemigdal Hashem, Kemigdal David Tzavarech. So every Tzavar has to have a Kaneh and a Veshet. What's the Kaneh of the Beis HaMikdash? And what's the Veshet of the Beis HaMikdash? The Kaneh HaRoitzeh Lehachkim Yadrim. You want to become smart? You go to the south. The Gemara in Bava Basra Chafei Amabei says, right? V'simanech menorah shabadarim. The menorah represents what? Torah Shabbat Peh. Torah Shabbat Peh. Right? I just point out this parenthetically. Right? We know that Moshe Rabbeinu was neskasha b'menorah. He couldn't understand the menorah. So in Parshat Aloscha, Hashem says, "V'zeh tasa." This is how you have to do it. What did Moshe get? But the Mizbeach was easier than the menorah. Why was the menorah so complicated? Right? If our scroll got it down, then Moshe Rabbeinu could get it. Right? What was so complicated about the menorah? So listen to this. The Gra says that if you look in Rashi and Parshas Truma, how many Kaf Toirim, how many Geviyim were in the menorah? Geviyim. There were 22 goblets on the menorah. Geviyim, 22 goblets. How many Perachim? 9. That's 31. How many Kaftairim? 11. 42. Plus, how many branches of the menorah? 7. That's 49. And the menorah itself was the 50th. We know Moshe Rabbeinu was given 49 levels of Chachma. Chasar Achas, right? The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says, Shenemar v'atachasrei mi'at me'elikim. There are 50 levels of Chachma. Moshe understood how many? 49. Represented by the 49 ornaments of the menorah. What he didn't understand is the 50th shar of Chachma that the menorah itself represents. So he was Neskasha b'menorah, and Hashem had to show it to him, because he couldn't fathom what the menorah represented. The menorah represents Chachma Satira. Right? The Netziv points out that in the Midrashim, when a Tana says a good svara, what does Reb Tarfon say? Kaftar v'ferach. Yeah, when I was in yeshiva, if you say a good pshat and shir, the Rebbe would say, Kaftar v'ferach. What's he saying? Buttons and flowers? The ornaments of the menorah represent Chachma Satira. The kaneh of the Beis HaMikdash, as Bnei Yissaschar, is what? The menorah. That's the windpipe. The veshed of the Beis HaMikdash is what? Shulchan. Shulchan. Is a shulchan. What? The shulchan, the table. The esophagus, the food pipe. We have 2 Yomim Tovim a year that connect us to Rebbeinu Shalom. We have Chanukah. Chanukah was niskan what? Lahaydos u'lahalel. Which pipe are we focusing on Chanukah? The kaneh. Lahaydos u'lahalel. But Purim, what do we focus on? The veshet, the shulchan, the veshet. We focus on the veshet on Purim, which is represented by which part of the Beis HaMikdash? The shulchan. The shulchan. So now we understand, Rabbi Isai. Now we understand what the Rekeach means. That after all the Yomim Tovim, it says V'yikchu elach Hashem and Zayisach. That's a remiss to what? The menorah, Chanukah. And after that, what? Shulchan. The Shulchan. Why the Shulchan? So we said because that was the argument that the Malachei Hasharis gave to Rebbeinu Shalom to save Klal Yisrael. But in fact, what we have over here is that the Shulchan, the Veshet, if this is the second pipe that attaches us to Rebbeinu Shalom, that's the second pipe. The Gra writes that Amalek is primarily focused on Achila. That the Amalek that is found inside of us is B'midi da Achila. And the Avodah on Purim is B'mishta v'simcha, to be able to understand why we're eating. We're eating because Shema yakdem kaneh leveshet. We eat l'shem shamayim, not that, Torah, Avodah, that's the ikr, and then we eat just for Hana. We eat so that the 2 vavs sit equally on the shulchan, and they both are mechazik each other. We learn l'shem shamayim, obviously, right? Now, learning l'shem shamayim is not as important. You know that? The Gemara says that la'olam yomad adam Torah afilu shaloi lishma. Even if you don't learn really l'shem shamayim, but when it comes to achila, you have to be more on guard that you eat l'shem shamayim. Why? Because it's very difficult to eat l'shem shamayim. Says the Chassam Sofer, that's the reason why. When it comes to shechting the kaneh, what's the halacha? If it's nifgam, if there's a pagam in the kaneh, it's only a problem if there's a pagam in most of the kaneh. But when the Gemara in Chulin says if there's a pagam in the veshet, even if there's a pagam in koshehu, it's possible. Why? Because when it comes to serving Hashem ba'achila, that requires more vigilance. You have to make sure that you're doing it properly.
100%.
So Memuchan is
Memuchan is really the argument. Memuchan is really the argument that that the Malachei Hasharis gave to Rebbeinu Shalom to save Klal Yisrael. What was the argument? The argument of the Shulchan. Says the Shlach Kadosh, take a look at your kaneh, or someone else's kaneh, and you'll notice there are 6 rings around the kaneh. In fact, there's 6 rings around the kaneh. What's the pshat?
Love.
Because what's the purpose of the kaneh? like Karas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bris Misa'ala B'Tar Shabbat Peh. The Gemara in Gittin says, what's the Tar Shabbat Peh? The Shishay Sidrei Mishnah. You have the 6 rings around the Kaneh to remind you what the function of the Kaneh is. What the function of the Kaneh is. It's amazing. Amazing thing. And Memela, when it came to Purim, and Klal Yisrael saw what happens when they forsake the Kaneh and they focus on the Veshet, and the Veshet turns into Shatu, and then the Veshet turns into Satan, and then comes the Eitz Gavoya Chamishim Amma when the Nun comes. So Klal Yisrael said, we have to make sure that we use the Veshet to serve the Kaneh, which is Torah Sheba'al Peh, and Memela, they're Makabel Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Ahava. By the way, this is all not my chidushim. It comes from a maimer of Rav Pinchas Friedman in the Sefer Shvilei Pinchas, Tavshin Samach Tes, if you want to take a look. Okay. So I was so excited to say it, we still have some time left. So let's elaborate even further. Haman is selecting, I didn't plan on saying this, but Rav Ezra is here, and I got so excited to say over this maimer, we have more time. Haman looks at the Chodesh of Adar. Right? He looks at all the Chadashim, and he picks the month of Adar. Why the month of Adar?
We said that already last
Why the
week.
month of Adar? Now we have a new pshat. Why the month of Adar? Why the month of Adar? And what's the Inyan, Rabbi Isai, that Haman Dafka wants to hang Mordechai? What does he have to hang Mordechai? There are many ways to go. Right? The Gemara says there are over 900 ways to go. Lamaves Taitzais. There are more than 900 ways to go. Why Dafka does Haman want to hang Mordechai? Okay. If you look at the Sfarno, Parsha Shmini, and this is also found in many Chasam Sofers Ala Torah, and we refer to some of them, the Beis HaMikdash is referred to as what? The Tzavar, the neck. The neck. Says the Chasam Sofer, the concept of having a neck implies that we need to be attached to the Rebbeinu Hashem through a medium. Right? Hashem is the Rosh, like we said. We're the Guf, and we need to be attached to the Rebbeinu Hashem through a Tzavar. Says the Sfarno, look in Parsha Shmini, that really we shouldn't need a Beis HaMikdash. Really what we would like is that Hashem should rest in us directly without a medium. Who needs a building? Why do we need a pipeline? We want Hashem to rest in us straightforward. Straightforward. Like it says, V'nasati mishkani b'soichechem. Says the Sfarno, says the Chasam Sofer, before the Ched Ho'egel, there was no plan to build a Mishkan. No, it was out of the plans. Why was it out of the plans? Who needs a medium? Who needs a Tzavar if you could have the Rosh and the Guf together as one? But on the other hand, we weren't Zaycha. And that's why if you look in the Sfarno, that's why Hashem commanded us about certain types of macholim that we have to eat. The Sfarno says, had it not been for the Ched Ho'egel, there would have been no commandment against treif. We would have been so nizdachech, we would have been so purified that Hashem would have rested in us. But because we sinned with the egel, we needed to purify our bodies so that Hashem could rest in us through a medium. But the main goal is, says the Chasam Sofer, says the Sfarno, la'asid lavai, we won't need a Beis HaMikdash. They say this openly. That we should. So what will we have the Beis HaMikdash for? Just to bring karbanos. But if you want to know where is going to be the resting place of the Shekhinah, on the Jew directly. No tzavar. We don't need a tzavar. The Beis HaMikdash Hashlishi is only going to be makom karbanos, but not a makom hashras hashchina. The makom hashras hashchina, the Sfarno says, Parsha Shmini, Chasam Sofer is Parshas Vayigash, and in many other places. By the way, the Avnei Nezer says the same thing in Parshas Vayigash, that la'asid lavai, we won't need a Beis HaMikdash. On the other hand, Zelu mazel asalekim. If we could reach a madrega that we're not going to need a neck to connect to God, then we know all the Umayis Ha'olam connect to their sar, right? How? They also have a medium, right? We know all the nations of the world are represented by different behemoths, right? We learned in Sefer Daniel that Bavel is represented by the lion. Bavel is the lion. Persia is the bear. Yavan is the leper, right? You look in Sefer Daniel. There is one Ummah that is so mituav and so disgusting. They don't need a pipeline. They don't need a neck between them and their Sharash HaTamah. Esav. What is Esav compared to? Chazir. Go to the zoo. You look at a pig. A pig is the only behemoth with no neck. It's a head and a goof. Bam. It's the only animal. No drushes over here. That's what it says in Tehillim. Yichar semeno chazir miyar. Esav is compared to the pig. Why is Esav compared to the pig?
Because he's a pig.
Because he's so connected. In other words, the Malach HaMaves, the Koyach HaTumah, is not connected to Esav, is Esav. The Rosh and the Guf are Mechubar Yachtav, says Chasam Sofer. But La'asid Lavai, we will be like Esav, connected to Hashem without a neck. We will be daimet to one other thing in this Bria that has no neck. Dug. Duggan. Fish has no neck. It's a head and a guf together, mechubar yachtav. So Esav is casting, Haman is casting Geirolos. Haman is casting lots. And he's looking at different months and he sees Dugim. And he mistakenly thinks, what? This is my time that I'm mamish mechubar leguf. This is like the dog, it's like the chazer. Now I'm mamish one with the koyach hatumah. Now I'm going to sever their connection. That's why the one thing that Haman did, what was the first thing he did? Before he came to power. Kasav sitna al Yushalayim. He seized the building of Beis HaMikdash. Right? The Gemara says, before Haman even rose to power, he stopped the tzavar. He cut them at the tzavar. And now he wants to destroy Klal Yisrael once and for all because he sees Mazal Adar Dagim. But he made a mistake. Because Mazal Adar Dagim is not for him. Mazal Adar Dagim represents that Adar is like a page out of La'asid Lavai. Adar, the Yom Tov of Purim, is mamish a time out of La'asid Lavai. It's out of a future era. That's why the Maral says, Kol hayamim tovim b'telim chutz mi Purim. Why chutz mi Purim? Because Purim is like a day out of La'asid Lavai. You know, it's imagine like Hashem went into a time machine. He took a day out of the Yemais HaMashiach and he put it into Bazman Hazeh. That's what Purim is. That's why Kol Hayom Tovim B'Telim, except for Purim, because Purim is one of those days. Purim is the dog. Purim represents the time that we're not going to need the tzavar. We're mamish mechubar, roishai, legufai. Roishai, legufai. So now, instead of Haman hanging Mordechai on the 8th, Gavaya, Chamishim Amma, after he severs the Beis HaMikdash, now Mordechai, just the opposite, he hangs Haman, and Haman is cut. His connection to his Koyach HaTumah is cut, and following the Purim miracle, Klal Yisrael returns to Eretz Yisrael, they build the Beis HaMikdash, they establish the Tzavar, they return the Menorah, the Kaneh, they return the Shulchan, the Veshet. You read the Torah, we have a remes to these two Yom Tovim following the Parsha of the Moyadim. First you have Lakachta, V'yikol Hashem and Zayazach. That's the Menorah. That's Chanukah. That's the Kaneh. Then you have Lakachta Soiles. That's the Shulchan. Like Memuchan says to Achashverosh, Klum Heichinu Shulchan Lefanecha. So we have to understand the Avodah of Purim is not that the Veshet should get carried away and turn into Satan. It's just the opposite. That the Veshet should be influenced by the Kaneh. And you have two Vav standing side by side. By the way, I saw the Belzer Rebbe said that's why the Mizbeach can't be smack in between the Menorah and the Shulchan. Why? Because the Kaneh and Veshet have to be side by side. There's no such thing. One has to influence the other. So the Avodah of Purim is that, by the way, that the Ramah writes that there's an Inyan to learn right before the Suda. Right before the Suda, there's an Inyan to learn. The Ramah cites the pasuk, La Yehudim, Haisa, Hayra, V'simcha. Hayra zu Taira. What's the Inyan of learning at the Suda? Sudat Purim. Right before the Suda, the Ramah says you should learn a little bit. By the way, I'll tell you something very interesting. The Ramah says you should learn before Sudat Purim. The Mishnah Berurah writes, Shloshim Yom Koydem Achag, you should start learning Hilchos Pesach. So the Rosh Kluger writes in a tshuva, if you have to learn before the Suda, and you're supposed to learn Hilchos Pesach on Purim, put two to two together, you should learn Hilchos Pesach before Purim. But what's the union of learning before the Suda? Says the Dakei Moshe, the Ramah on the Torah, because you don't want to get carried away with the Suda. You don't want to get carried away. Yeah, Purim is about Mishta v'Simcha, but you don't want the Mishta v'Simcha to turn the Veshet into Satan. So you learn a little bit to understand that you want the Kaneh to influence the Veshet. You want the Kaneh? By the way, we know Maran Bet Yosef, right? He had a Malach that came to learn with him. So the Maran Bet Yosef writes in the Magid Meishar Parshas Vayakel that the Maggid told him, the Malach told him, why do we fast on Tainus Esther? Why do we fast on Tainus Esther? The Maggid said, because you don't want to get carried away with Sudas Purim. You want to start with a little bit of tshuva to understand the frame of mind you have to have for Purim. The avodah of Purim is that the kaneh should influence the veshet. They stand side by side on the shulchan, 6 on one side, 6 on the other side. That's the remez to Purim. Have a wonderful day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.